Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive legal and financial misconception that, honestly, catches millions of families completely off guard. We're pulling some eye-opening insights from a really compelling piece by Kuyakai William Peatham. He's a commissioner of senior affairs and an estate planning expert, and he breaks down exactly what happens when the inevitable occurs. And spoiler alert, the preparations most of us assume are totally fine? Yeah, they usually aren't. So if you've ever felt like your estate planning is just some box you checked off on a to-do list years ago, you might want to get comfortable because we're about to completely shift your perspective.
Okay, let's just dive straight into this incredibly common and, let me tell you, incredibly costly assumption. Peatham's readers constantly ask him this exact question. People spend all this time drafting a will, they get it notarized, they lock it in a safe, and they just breathe this huge sigh of relief. They're thinking, well, I've got a will, so my family is naturally going to bypass that miserable, expensive court process called probate, right? They just assume the will acts as this sort of VIP pass straight past all the legal red tape. But here is the really surprising reality. Usually, no. No, don't get me wrong, a will is an absolutely essential legal document, for sure. But for so many families, especially in places like California where the author practices, it's literally just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The hard truth here is that a will often does not prevent probate. In fact, it actually serves as the exact document the probate court uses to figure out how to distribute your estate. It doesn't bypass the court at all. It basically invites the court in to validate and execute your wishes. And tragically, many families only discover this critical distinction after a loved one has passed away, right when everyone's emotions are running at an all-time high.
Let's move to our first core concept, a tale of two front doors, preparation versus chaos.
So I want you to imagine two totally identical families with completely different outcomes. Both families worked hard, both own their homes, both have solid retirement savings. And then suddenly, the father in each family unexpectedly passes away. Let's look at family A first. They gather around the kitchen table with a binder clearly labeled Family Legacy Plan. Inside is a living trust, a power of attorney, updated beneficiaries, the whole shebang. They cry, they reminisce, and then they execute the plan. They get to grieve in peace because everyone's rules are crystal clear. But now, look at Family B. Their very first question isn't, hey, how are you holding up? It's, wait, where are the documents? Nobody knows. Somebody thinks they remember seeing a will maybe 10 years ago. Meanwhile, the bank is demanding documentation. The title company is asking a million questions. They are completely paralyzed by missing paperwork and conflicting memories. And listen, they aren't arguing because they don't love each other. They're arguing because no one left them a roadmap.
Which brings us to our next section, the hidden costs of probate, what probate really means.
The absolutely crucial point here is understanding what probate actually is. At its core, probate is a formal legal process. Its job is to identify assets, pay off legitimate debts, and hand out whatever property is left. Now, to be fair, probate exists for very good reasons, mainly to ensure fairness and legality. But because it is a court-supervised process, it's highly public, it can be unbelievably time-consuming, and depending on where you live, it can be shockingly expensive. And honestly, it's the financial mechanics of probate that usually deliver the biggest gut punch. To brilliantly illustrate this financial shock, the author asks us to just imagine a family home valued at $1.5 million. And, nowadays, that's really not an uncommon number for a nice family home in a lot of parts of the country. So let's look at how this brilliantly illustrates the trap. The home's gross value is $1.5 million. But let's say the family still owes $800,000 on the mortgage. That leaves the owner's equity, the actual wealth the family holds in the property, at $700,000. Well, here's the kicker. In states like California, statutory fees for attorneys and executors in formal probate are generally based on the massive gross value of $1.5 million, not the $700,000 of actual equity. So those fees are being calculated on money the family doesn't even truly own yet. It just needlessly eats away at the legacy you actually intended to leave behind. But setting those shocking financial calculations aside for a second, we really have to talk about the emotional toll. Because the greatest expense of probate, it usually never appears on an invoice. We're talking about siblings who stop speaking due to petty misunderstandings, adult children carrying this intense, heavy guilt because they aren't entirely sure what mom or dad actually wanted, surviving spouses getting totally overwhelmed by a mountain of legal paperwork while they're actively just trying to process their grief.
grandchildren left waiting for months, sometimes even years, for matters to finally be settled. This is the heavy, invisible burden of an unprepared estate. So naturally, the question is, how do we avoid all this chaos? How do we protect the people we love from this probate trap? Let's explore that in Section 3, the map and the bridge, choosing the right tool. Our source material provides a truly perfect analogy for this situation. Think of a will as simply a map. It provides instructions. It tells your family the exact destination you wanted them to reach. It says, I want my house to go to my daughter, and I want my savings to go to my son. But here's the thing about a map. It doesn't physically transport you there. It doesn't clear the roadblocks or pay the highway tolls. It just points the way. Your family still has to hike through the difficult, muddy terrain of the probate court to actually reach that final destination. Now, in stark contrast to a map, a properly funded living trust acts like a bridge. And the best part? You build this bridge while you're still alive. By placing your assets into the trust, that bridge is already fully constructed to carry your family safely and smoothly right over all those legal obstacles of probate. When you pass away, they don't need a judge to grant them permission to cross. The structure is already right there, ready to facilitate a totally seamless transition of your legacy.
So let's test this out. Section 4, 3 questions for your family, testing your preparation.
Question number 1. If something happened tonight, who would immediately know where your important documents are? I want you to take a second and really truly think about this. Not just, I think I told my son once like 5 years ago. Do your loved ones know exactly where to look in a sudden midnight crisis? Is there a clearly labeled binder on a shelf, a safe with a combination they actually know, or a digital vault they have the password to?
All right, question number 2. If you became unable to manage your finances tomorrow, who would legally have authority to act on your behalf? And please notice the word legally there. You have to consider who has the actual documented authority, something like a durable power of attorney, to step in right away. It is just not enough to assume your spouse or your eldest child would naturally be able to step up and handle things. Without that legal designation on paper, they might find their hands completely tied by banks and institutions who simply won't talk to them. And finally, question number 3. Would your family spend their first month grieving your loss? Or would they spend it frantically searching through filing cabinets? Your honest answer to this final question really highlights the true gap between just feeling confident that you're fine and actually being prepared. Most people answer these 3 questions with a lot of initial confidence, but then they pause. Because, as Pitum notes, confidence and certainty, they aren't always the same thing.
Which brings us to our final section. Legacy is an act of love, securing peace of mind. Ultimately, what we're learning from this explainer is that estate planning isn't just some cold, clinical calculation of bank accounts and real estate parcels. It is fundamentally about preserving dignity and creating absolute clarity during life's most uncertain, painful moments. I mean, think back to our tale of 2 front doors earlier. Both of those families loved each other deeply. The family tearing through filing cabinets and fighting with bank tellers didn't love their father any less than the family sitting peacefully with their organized legacy binder. As the author so powerfully puts it, the difference wasn't love, the difference was preparation. Taking the time today to build that bridge is literally the ultimate act of caring for your family's future well-being. So I'm going to leave you with this really provocative thought from the source material. Is your legacy going to be measured by the size of your estate or by the peace of mind you leave behind? Seriously, are you willing to take just one afternoon this week to spare your family from countless hours of stress and uncertainty tomorrow? Because the families who experience the greatest peace are rarely the luckiest. They're simply the ones who prepared before they had to. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly, highly encourage you to review your own legacy blueprint today.